Hi, I'm Tristan Miller, and this is Positive and Negative, a podcast about the intersectionality between mental health and the arts. Today on the program, I speak with comedian Andie Basto about their experience with anxiety and depression. This is Andie talking about living with depression.
I try to be gentle with myself about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's something that it's going to be with me the rest of my life. So it's I have to learn to live with it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to accept it, but I got to learn to live with it.
You can support this podcast by going to patreon.com/Tristan J. Miller for early access to extended interviews, along with a myriad of other kinds of content for and about mental health. Our theme song is by Billy Conahan. It's To Be or Nah off of the album Leaping with Intent to Fly, available wherever fine music is sold. All right, let's get to this interview. So you were saying you grew up in Virginia?
Yeah, in the suburbs of Fairfax County.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a lot of shorts wearers down there.
Yeah,
cargo shorts with the zippers, 3 tiers.
You were saying earlier that it was a lot of Confederate flags.
Yes.
And I'm being presumptuous here. You're not white.
No.
How was that growing up in that culture?
It sure was.
It was.
It sure was. Yeah, no, it just it was one of those things I didn't realize until I was out of it exactly how much had influenced my upbringing and how much I had just accepted that this was the status quo for the area, the attitudes and just general I don't know, perceptions about things. I just was just kind of okay, that's how it is. And then I became an adult and I began the process of unlearning a lot of this and just kind of unpacking oh, and I've been treated differently because I am not like everybody else around here. And yeah, it sure was.
Do you think that impacted your perception of self-worth?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I spent a lot of time with my therapist, really unpacking that and just kind of getting that feedback too of hey, that's not normal. Hey, you're not supposed to feel like that. That constant pressure to subscribe to these particular norms because they're never going to be your norms. You're of a different heritage, you're a different culture. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. What sort of norms are you talking about, though? Can you give some examples?
When I was in middle school, obsessively straightening my naturally curly hair.
So that did impact you. And how did you unlearn those things? What steps did you take?
Just kind of diving into my own heritage. A lot of my family is based in Bolivia. So I just kind of got to know them a little bit more and the history of my own family. And just I don't know, I just branched out a little bit more in terms of my friend groups too, to just kind of also learn okay, there's other cultures besides my mostly white school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so just kind of forcing myself to do extracurriculars specifically so I could meet people that I didn't have to go to school with, if that makes sense.
What did you choose to do?
Theater, stand up, and
very good.
Yeah.
So did you start stand up when you were young? When did you start?
So no, my interest in comedy came when I was young. I started doing theater in middle school and high school, and I remember one of my first things that I did was like a one-act play where I played a girl who went on a series of bad dates, which is pretty much what my stand-up routine is today. And yeah, but so that just kind of gave me the bug, right, for performance and stuff, and specifically for comedy, because I like the feedback of like making an entire room of people laugh.
Yes.
And that attention. And then I was always like a writer, so I just like always had bits and stuff and thought about, doing like the YouTube thing. But then I was like, let me try stand up. I had some friends who got me into it, and then that became a thing for me.
How old were you when you started doing stand-up?
That was 5 years ago. It was like my comedyversary a couple days ago.
Congrats.
So yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was just like the passage of time. It's crazy.
Yeah. You said you were interested in it from an early age in comedy. What do you mean by that? Like, were you watching Comedy Central? What?
Oh yeah, I would watch Comedy Central like obsessively all day, and then stay up until like 3 a.m. to watch Clerks or like Eddie Murphy's Raw special.
Yeah.
Like uncensored,
100%.
Yeah. So it was a lot of that, and then just like movies and TV, like as much as I could take in, but always choosing like comedy. And then just coming up with bits like with my friends. My brother and I would like make silly little videos with like our stuffed animals and stuff, and just having fun with it.
So it was always there.
Yeah.
You said you were always a writer. What kind of writing do you mean?
I always did creative writing, like short stories or like fanfics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's open that door.
Yeah.
Who did you write about fan fiction wise?
My favorite fan fiction that I've ever done was a Jersey Shore / Twilight crossover. It was beautiful, actually.
Sounds fantastic. Do you still have the file around? Is it still on AO3 or whatever?
It is in one of my journals, but I remember I brought that to school. I read it out loud to everybody in the cafeteria. And it was just a thing. Like my friends and I used to make like little zines and like comics and stuff.
That is
and
so
then
sweet.
Yeah, and then occasionally I would like throw in a little story like that, or just like some stupid little fanfic like that, and just
That's fantastic. So wanting to be in front of people was always there, though, it seems.
Yeah, and then I just kind of realized like I can marry both of those things with stand-up.
Why do you think you want to be in front of people?
The attention and the adoration that I did not receive at home.
Okay, let's talk about that. What do you mean by that? Like, sure, you can fill in whatever blank I'm filling in whatever blanks I think are you not receiving that attention, but what actually does that mean?
Well, and it's just one of these things that my therapist and I have unpacked as just kind of like receiving that attention in like a positive way.
Okay.
And like also impacting people in a positive way. That's not something I'm very used to. And receiving or having expressed around me, if that makes sense.
Sure. So were your family very critical growing up, would you say?
Oh yeah, hypercritical, very like religious, devoutly like Catholic and stuff, and things like homosexuality were not really like discussed unless it was like in a disparaging way or just like kind of negative way. And so I just like didn't really know that was an option until later on when I started asking myself the questions and like exploring for myself, and then realizing like, oh, all my friends are in the Gay Straight Alliance and I'm very passionate about gay rights.
Can't imagine
what's that about? Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that a fair amount. So you were kind of first experiencing those feelings when you were in high school?
Yeah, like middle school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What did you do with those feelings, and how was it processing that at a young age like that?
So Yeah, funny enough, one of my first homosexual relationships.
What is it about the word homosexuality that is
Right.
inherently funny? It's so archaic,
I know,
right?
it really is.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was like baby's first, like,
Baby's first gay.
baby's first gay, exactly. At, it was 4-H camp. And, right?
And that's how you know you're in Virginia.
Yeah, so, but it was just like, oh, this is a thing. We can hold hands and I get the tingly feelings. Like, but yeah, and then going to Catholic school too, was also just like, okay, wait, like they keep telling us not to do this thing, but what if the thing feels good?
I mean, isn't that's Catholicism in a nutshell, isn't it? So how did you come to terms with that, having grown up Catholic and then realizing those things about yourself?
Therapy.
So when did you start?
15, also
Oh.
shortly after I came out of the closet.
Okay.
It was just kind of like, okay, here you go, Andrea. You're gonna go to therapy now, and you're gonna figure that out. And figure it out, I did. But yeah.
So what was that process like? You said 15. That's very young.
Yeah. So
Were they hoping for you to get ungayified from the therapy? Was that the goal?
my parents thought I was confused, and so that was the reaction when I came out as bi. They were like, "You're confused. You don't know what you're talking about." And I was just like, "No, I'm not." And it was very frustrating. And yeah, so the response was to put me through lots of therapy and to figure out why I'm such a rebel in every aspect and why I liked smoking weed and hanging out with all these other kids who were being gay. and we figured out it's because I liked it.
Really, Occam's razor, truly. Do you think that doing stand-up is sort of like an extension of that? Because stand-ups are famously misanthropes.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's always been like interesting to me how some people will have like entire like stage personas, but in real life they could be just like the most quiet, like humble person. And I feel like as a queer person, like definitely relatable because it was just like, you know, the face that I would have to show of like heteronormativity and like at home and among my peers and stuff. But like now reality is like that's been my stage persona. In real life I am queer and I like being queer. You know what I mean?
Are you still in therapy now?
Yeah.
But for different reasons.
Yeah, just to kind of cope with the, I don't know if you heard the past
The
couple
everything?
years.
Yeah.
The everything. There's been a lot in my personal life too, which compounded with the everything. Yeah. So continuing thing, although just kind of I did a lot of talk therapy growing up initially.
Yeah.
And now I've only started branching out into like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is
That's the good stuff.
yeah.
How do your parents feel about you now, if I may ask? Because you're very out. Are they like, I really wish they wouldn't do that?
Yeah. So
How's Thanksgiving is what I'm asking.
So we're not super close anymore. Not that we ever truly were, but I have set up my boundaries and stuff. For instance, they don't really know much about my personal life. Like it's just gonna be the thing now that like, you know how people like disappear and then they show up married,
Sure.
like on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's very much gonna be like the vibe because
Okay.
yeah.
Is that hard on you?
It is, but it also is just kind of like it kind of refreshing to have those boundaries and like have them like I've been reinforcing them, which is not something I did previously. And so like there is just like a little bit more respect. But yeah, I mean, it hurts. Like I have friends who have great relationships with their parents and their siblings and stuff. But at the same time, I have a lot of like friends that I consider like my found family.
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm missing that particular like aspect of my life of like people that I'm close to, but I mean, that's like what people want, is to be close to their family and stuff. And
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to do that when they don't believe that you are who you identify as.
Yeah. You realized you were bisexual pretty early on. What about the non-binary thing?
So that is a newer aspect of my life. I only came out like a year ago, but started questioning maybe like a couple years ago, and just kind of like experiencing with my gender presentation and stuff. But still wanted to just kind of like do the research and figure it out in therapy as well. Like, yeah, so I don't know. That in particular has been like a newer journey for me, but also kind of like vocalizing that, hey, I'm not fully expressing my gender. This is who I want to be. Has made me feel more like myself. And it's like, okay, maybe like retroactively I'm looking back and realizing like, oh, okay, maybe I'm answering questions that I had before now after the fact. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. So you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy. I assume that means you're anxious.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. When did you start noticing that in your life?
It definitely cropped up in like middle school, so maybe like 12, 13. I started like struggling with like test anxiety, things like that. And I had also just like moved to a new school and everything, so that was the assumption, like, oh, well, you just can't handle it because everything's more difficult now.
Yeah.
I was just like, no, it's just me. Like, I understand everything that's happening. I just can't do it because my brain is hurting. Like,
Yeah. And so when you realized that, what did you initially do to cope?
So a lot of like the writing and stuff was primarily journaling. And I journaled for everything, like just for my day, and then I would do like dream journals, and then yeah, that was my only like outlet. And I was just like kind of introverted, and just not really like socialized. Like I really just like did not really talk to a lot of other people, just because like I didn't really know how, or like have the opportunity, or like so I had like a very like internal like what do you call it, like whatever, just like
You want to internalize the anxiety rather than like getting like panic attacks and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And so it manifested into like the panic attacks and stuff, and then then it was like, okay, yeah, now my parents like saw that and they're like, okay, you can go to therapy.
So they needed proof time and time again. And do you think that's why you're so vocal now, and why you're so like, I mean, stand-up is one of the few places where you can go, this is what I think. Do you think you're drawn to it because of that?
Definitely. And just like in my real life too, like I am trying to stand up for myself more and assert my boundaries and what I am and am not comfortable with, because for so long I was a doormat, and I still have like little flashes of that, but I'm the only one who can change that,
Yeah. How's that going?
It's a work in progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just did a set at Broadway Comedy Club, and you were saying you were so anxious that you were almost vomiting?
Yeah. So the way my anxiety will manifest too is with insomnia. So that was also the case. But yes, I vomited from nerves,
Oh my gosh.
and that is very rare, and I never like doing it, but it happens. Because usually it's just stomach aches,
Yeah.
right? But the nausea is a fun new thing for me now. It's also why I don't drink anymore, or one of the reasons why I don't drink, because it's just there's a lot of stuff going on.
Sure.
Right, but
I can respect that.
yeah, but it's like whenever I come off stage, I don't know if you feel this too. It's like I always feel that relief,
Sure.
and that there's like a little bit of adrenaline there too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the highlight.
But do you find that your anxiety gets in the way of writing and performing a lot?
Not so much with the writing, but definitely like with the performing. I wouldn't say that like I experience that often. Because keep in mind, like this one show last night, I had to like travel and I had to make all these arrangements and stuff, and that's not usually part of me performing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it it's one of the things I love and hate about stand-up is that I do have to perform and I have to show up and do that whole thing. It's like I enjoy it, but my anxiety doesn't, kind of thing.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. How do you, when it does crop up, what do you do to deal with it?
So a lot of like breath work, meditation. I will just like obsessively go over my set. What else?
What kind of meditation do you do?
I do a lot of like guided sleep meditations.
Okay.
And then
Like headspace stuff?
I've tried that, but I there's one podcast I listen to called Tracks to Relax.
Okay.
Like I subscribe to their Patreon and everything. They're so cool. But it's just like very calming, like guided meditations. Sometimes I'll just do like sound baths and stuff, or just like listen to like a low tone or something. There's like specific decibels or something.
Yeah, put on a racer head and
Yeah, that's another one though. Is I'll put on my headphones and just
jam out to the low tones of David Lynch coming at you next on this track. Do you find it cathartic to do stand-up?
Yeah, I think so.
How has it changed over the last 5 years?
For
you, what's the process?
So I'm definitely more real when it comes to my writing. Like I've gotten more personal with it. I think when I started, I was very like goofy, absurdist,
Sure,
corny.
Yeah.
But I had fun with it, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you my comedy's still not like that. Very much is. But I'm, I feel more comfortable like being myself and like announcing that to the room, like, hey, just so you know, in addition to being a person, I'm also these are my identities and this is who I am and you should know that. Like, yeah.
Sure. Do you ever also, in addition to feeling anxious, do you feel depressed as well?
Yeah, constantly. As underlying current. Yeah, and that has been recurring in my life, like very like high and low depressions. I went to the psych ward like a couple years ago now because it got really bad. It was just like a lot of stuff in my personal life that all came crashing down at once. But at the same time, like I'm kind of grateful that I went at the time that I did and was able to like find more ways to cope. Because it is just like a recurring thing, and it's like I try to like be gentle with myself about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's something that it's going to be with me like the rest of my life. So it's like I have to learn to live with it. I don't have to like it. I don't have to like accept it, but I got to learn to live with it, kind of thing.
What was the psychiatric ward like?
This is going to sound however it sounds, but honestly, it was kind of fun.
Yeah. I've often gone, you know what sounds nice? A 2-week vacation with a bunch of other nuts. Like,
Yeah.
That sounds great.
And it was. That's, I learned the baby shark dance while I was there. And
Very fun.
yeah, we had a pizza party. We all did baby shark. And then we had group therapy the next day, and most of us cried. But I don't know. It's just like, you know, you get so close with like strangers.
Like summer camp.
Yeah, it was very much like summer camp. Except, yeah, we were got very close very quickly, and you know, everybody's working on themselves. But you learn a lot in the process too, because it's like, you know, everybody who's there is there for like their mental health, and most likely it's not their first experience like trying to get help for their mental health, you know. So you learn a lot from other people.
Having gone through that, did it make it easier for you to ask for help now?
Definitely. Yeah, especially because, like, you know, it's like everybody is going through their own battles and stuff, and we all cope with it differently. But again, as someone who has internalized a lot of this stuff over like the course of my life, like now being vocal about it and reaching out, is also like, okay, at the same time, you can encourage other people to reach out to you. And then it's like more of an open concept, you know what I mean? In like helping each other. It's more of a community thing than just like privately suffering.
It seems like over and over you've tried to find a community for you. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I'm human, you know, we're social creatures.
Sure.
We're social creatures, and we all have that need to be accepted and loved and, you know, like taken care of. And it's like, taking care of yourself is really hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's very difficult. But yeah, it's like, you gotta learn, like, who can help you and how, you know? Yeah, because just all I know so far about life is that it's going to continue to kick my ass, you know?
Yeah. That's often when someone says, I feel like I need to suffer for my art. I'm like, don't worry, life has it covered. Don't get in your own way. When you say that it's a constant, does that make it difficult to be creative? And if so, how?
Yeah, it's like sometimes I just don't have the energy to be as creative as I would like, you know? And it's what is it, like the spoon concept? You've heard of that one? Yeah, it's like I only have so many that I can dole out. But if I'm feeling very depressed and stuff, that's like, okay, I need to plan for that time too, you know? Because I still got to take care of me. So, yeah, I don't know.
You said it's hard to learn how to take care of yourself. What do you do now to do that?
I call it preventative maintenance. I have like we were talking about this, like having contingency plans and stuff. Yeah, so I have like just kind of things for myself, like for instance, a lot of frozen meals and stuff for when I don't have the energy to cook, or like like just people to call or activities to do when I know I'm like feeling super low and I just want to, you know, put everything off. And yeah, that's been mostly my coping strategy for that.
And was that learned in therapy, or did you come up with that on your own self?
With the help of therapy and stuff of like, okay, like, for instance, like we got winter coming up and stuff, so I got like my sad lamps ready to go, you know.
Yeah, I do. And were you happy with the first therapist you got? Because sometimes that's really tricky to find one that works for you.
No. Because my parents found that first therapist, and I mean, she was nice. She was very sweet and very kind, but I don't know. It was like, it was just like a very weird dynamic that she had with my parents. And I mean, I was a child. I get it. But at the same time, I was just like, oh, if this is therapy, I don't like it. And that's not good. I don't think. So I don't know.
So did you come in with that attitude when you had to go to another therapist later on? You're like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, it was just kind of like I wasn't as open, you know, because it was just like, I know she's going to tell some stuff to my parents, so I can't like show all my cards, you know?
Yeah.
So it was like very selective in the things that I told her.
Mm-hmm. And then did that impact how you do therapy now? Did you have to unlearn that?
Yeah, definitely. Because then, you know, I became an adult and
Congrats.
I had to... Thank you. I'm still trying to, you know, figure that out.
Yeah.
But, and then I had to like find my own therapists and stuff. And really opened up the doors a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you, and let me know if this is too personal, are you on any medication? Or are you worried that that's going to change your personality for the worse?
So I have been on a ton of different medications, and it's just always been like, I got to find what works for me. Yeah. Especially when it comes to like side effects and stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. It's like the same with birth control. It's like, yeah, there's always the danger that it will change who you are and stuff. And, but it's at the same time, it's like, you kind of need it to do what it has to do. Yeah. Like, that's why you're trying to get it in the first place. Yeah.
It's going to change your personality, but hopefully for the better.
Yeah. And like, hopefully prevent like worse stuff from happening, like babies.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I was talking in the terms of antidepressants and so forth, but yes, that also birth control. Too. Yeah. So that wasn't a good experience for you, though, trying different medications. And was that difficult to reckon with? Because that's often thrown as the first solution to specifically depression.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just kind of like, you know, you gotta find the shoes that fit kind of thing. And I feel like at different points in my life, being more medicated definitely helped me. When things were like really, really, really bad. And now I've just kind of been weaned off like the cocktail that I was on before, basically. But that's what works for me. You know what I mean? And I'm good with where I'm at on that. But that's not to say that I haven't been at that point too, where I had to take like a bunch of like mood stabilizers and all that.
Are you afraid that it's going to get bad enough where you're going to end up in the psych ward again?
I mean, that's always like a possibility, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm not necessarily afraid of that because it's like I've already gone through that. Yeah. It was scary the first time because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know like I had a lot going on in my life that I had to put on pause, and the thought of putting everything on pause was the big scary thing for me.
Yeah.
But afterwards it was like, you know what, that was necessary. I have to take care of me. And so now going forward, if that were to be the case again, I feel like I could definitely be more open to it and like just kind of dive into it. So it's not necessarily like a fear of that happening again. More like what circumstances would it take, you know?
Sure.
Like, but as I will say this,
you're not worried about the ward, you're worried about what led you there.
Yeah, exactly. Like how, because it, yeah.
How bad is it? Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, things have been is there wood pretty good lately. Yeah. Yeah.
Was it difficult during the lockdown?
Oh yeah. Because I had to move during that. I had to move out of my living situation that just became more unstable, and that's really all I want to get into with that. But
Understood.
had to get the frick out of there, and then move in with a friend of mine, and just kind of like navigate the world falling down around us.
Yeah.
And just like the dynamic of living with somebody else in a very small apartment in a brand new city where I didn't know anybody else, and being unemployed, and just like being broke, and I mean it was just like a very difficult like 6 months that I just kind of had to like rebuild my life from scratch, you know, from like living on this air mattress at my friend's place to like getting a job, getting an apartment, getting a roommate, making new friends, dating again, which was still a thing. But yeah, and just kind of like, you know, meanwhile the world is like burning down around us. So all of that is very much like precursor to Psych Ward.
Yeah.
But that's what happened after Psych Ward. So it's like, you know, what a great time to like go be locked up in the Psych Ward and then come out, and then like within a few months.
So the Psych Ward was recent.
Yeah.
Within like the last year or so, year and a half, I guess.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Okay.
Now. Yeah.
What would your biggest piece of advice to someone who's coming to any sort of realization about their identity and how that impacts their mental health?
Definitely like to the best of your ability, like try to dive into it. Like, you know, figure out what your questions are and then figure out how you're going to get those answers from where and from who. And, you know, you kind of like need to write your own guide, but at the same time, go with what has been like tested and true and find what fits for yourself. You know, it's like we all have our like different paths to go on and stuff. And, you know, so like maybe going to the Psych Ward is not going to work for you. Maybe going to therapy, going to talk therapy doesn't work for you. So maybe try cognitive behavioral therapy. Maybe try new medications. Like, you got to be open to trying, because, you know, that's how you're going to find what's comfortable for you. And that's what you need, is you need to find that comfort.
All right. So how do you write a joke? Do you wait for something funny to happen, or do you, what's that like?
I like waiting for something funny to happen.
So you're lazy? No.
Yes, actually, I'm very lazy. I will take dialogue from my real life. I'll throw like random phrases and stuff, or I'll just like, I don't know. Sometimes I come up with the punchline before the joke.
Yeah.
Right? Work backwards. Go through my old stuff, pick that apart, and then put it back together like a puzzle.
Isn't that such a joy? I was like literally last night going through old notebooks and you're like, oh, this isn't good, but this idea is. And then knowing what you know now, applying your skills and like being able to see how much you've grown.
Yeah, it's like the thing, a big comfort thing for me is like rewatching old movies. And it's just like the movie never changes, but you do. And your understanding of everything around that or what's happening in it changes. And yeah, it's like that.
Have you been finding that like having to pivot to online has been made your mental health worse? Like because for specifically like during 2020, all the comedians had to do it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's worse because of it or?
Okay, so it was good and bad.
Yeah.
It was good because I was drinking a lot when I was going out for comedy like 3 or 4 times a week, and that was bad.
Yes.
But it was also bad because the only thing I had to do was confront my own writing and stuff, and that could be torturous. But good in that I could focus on that, kind of. I don't know.
Do you feel self-conscious about your writing?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't go, oh, this is good? Have you ever felt like written something and like, no, this slaps?
I mean, yes, I get that too. But I also know sometimes artists are unappreciated. So it's like I might think it slaps, but then everybody might want to slap me. Which is valid.
When you receive negative feedback on stage, does that hurt your feelings? Like, do you carry that with you?
It depends on what it is, because there's some people's opinions who I respect more than others.
Sure. So, but like, so let's say you're doing a stand-up show and the crowd isn't buying it. Would that, like, will that send you into a funk?
If I got booed by, like, an entire stadium, I would just quit stand-up right there.
Really?
And I think more comedians should take that approach.
I feel the opposite. Like, if I'm in a stadium, say, like, there's 500 people even, like, and there's silence, I'm like, I have to reconfigure everything I've ever thought about comedy. If I get booed, I at least know I'm eliciting a reaction, where I'm like, okay, at least we're playing ball. At least they're listening to me. But maybe that's because I don't know, I like to be confrontational for no reason sometimes. I don't know.
Sure.
There's a perverse pleasure one gets going, they hate me. I knew it.
Or maybe it's like that thing from Back to the Future where, you know, you're absolutely killing it on stage, but it's like, oh, you guys aren't ready for that yet.
Oh, yeah. I feel that a lot, to be honest. I'll say something, and people are like, what the hell? And I'm like, when you see the show again, you'll love it. But yeah, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate your candor.
Thank you for having me. I hope I was making sense.
You were. Yeah. Don't listen to your parents' kids. That's the main takeaway.
Yeah. They're literally just adults.
Did that mess with your mind? Learning that? That you're like, are you the age your parents were when they had you yet?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Does that mess with your perception of everything? Mm-hmm. Good or bad?
It's kind of both. It's like, now I see them as more humanized. Mm-hmm. They did what they had to do, but at my expense.
I see. So you understand, but you don't necessarily forgive.
Yeah. Or agree.
Or agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.